Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome.
Welcome to another week of CLCI Live.
Oddly
Lisa, what an interesting jacket you're wearing.
The first time it was genuine. I was genuinely curious.
I know. The second time we're doing it, we thought we went live.
Yeah,
Thanks to Kelly. She got the first one for me. It looks really fantastic.
And then I said something about making Letterman jackets or other CLCI merchandise for students to buy.
And I didn't even think about that one.
Yeah. We can make a whole clothing brand out of it.
Well, there you go.
Brooke, what are we talking about this week?
Before we even go there, I'd like
before we go there,
a moment to invite those of you out there watching to please join in the conversation. We want to hear from you. The live is better when you participate in it. We like a collaborative and participatory live. So please, please, please join in. Tell us what you're thinking. Ask questions if you have them. Thoughts, share them. All of these good things. So
we will answer most questions.
That's all, folks. What we're talking about today, we're talking about a concept called thinking fast or slow. Thinking fast or slow. It was a book written by Nobel Prize winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman, and we're talking about how it may apply to coaching, essentially. But I think first we should sort of address what this topic is.
I want to say that is an unfortunate last name to be named Conman.
No.
Makes me not want to believe what he's saying.
Nobel Prize winner.
Yeah. And it's also not spelled the same way. Just saying.
No.
That's how I pronounce it.
Man. Oh dear.
Okay. So what is thinking fast and thinking slow? Don't I think at one speed?
No. So this is kind of something we address a little bit in our level 2, it's wearing a different outfit, I think. But it's something we talk about often. When we're talking about thinking fast, what are we talking about?
So like those immediate, I guess, either perceptions or things you can do almost automatically. Like, quickly, everybody, what's 3 times 6?
18.
What's 4 minus 1?
3. Thank God you're staying in elementary.
What's 40? What's 49 times 67?
49 times 67. Give me a moment. I can get it.
We're already not doing fast thinking anymore.
Darn it.
121, I guess.
Yeah, because I do have to have multiple processes start to go in. I take the numbers and there's a way I do that so that I can get them done pretty quick. But
if you can't do it automatically, then it's probably not an example of fast thinking. That was an example of slow thinking. So that's a quick way to show the difference between fast and slow thinking. But I guess we need a more better or definite definition of fast thinking.
So fast thinking is fast and emotional thinking. It's also what people might refer to it sort of as the reptilian brain, possibly. I think some think of it that way. It's definitely not frontal cortex thinking. It is that sort of where it's that quick, instinctual, reactionary thought processes that happen in us. That's the quick thinking, and a lot of times I think that it gets a bad rap, right? Like people go, well, we put a lot of weight in being able to have those logical thought processes, but there is a reason that this part of our brain works, and there's a reason it works so quickly. It's because it's operated to keep us alive. The reason that we are able to be living, breathing, eating human beings is we have to give a great deal of credit to this System 1 fast thinking process.
And so I can think of an example. As you were speaking there, it came to me. when I was on the 405 in California, the 405 driving home. So if we're going north on the 405, the two crazy motorcyclists drove past us, going really being young and dumb in that sense. Total judgment at that. In this case, y'all were sporty. They were weaving. They were popping wheelies on the highway. They were just not being very smart about this. They passed, and for the good news for them, it wasn't a normal 405 freeway, meaning it's normally jam-packed on that 405. And the cars, while busy, not nearly as busy. They clipped somebody's car. They flipped in the air. And while the fast thinking piece is where I'm running towards, is everybody on the highway stopped. Everybody could have that quick thinking that it was all in sync between all of us to stop on a dime on the 405 freeway. So I thought that was an interesting piece of that fast thinking piece that you were describing, where it was just a reactionary thing. We all slowed down, we stopped, and nobody, while I'm sure the speed they were going and the flip they did, their body was in pain. They didn't have to go through additional trauma because all of the quick thinking that everyone who was driving participated with. It was kind of like, it was just really interesting how that all came together.
What's interesting is that fast thinking is probably what led to the accident as well.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So it is that sort of instinctual. I mean, I think even our autonomic processes might fall into this as well. But those ones we really don't think about unless we try, like blinking. Although I did know somebody that didn't have the ability to, like, they had to consciously think of blinking. It wasn't built into their autonomic processes, and it was interesting. He had always had dry eyes. Let's talk then about slow thinking.
So slowing the thought down. I'm trying to think of some examples. If you're like, one of the examples I saw in one of the videos we were talking about, somebody was like, it was like a group of girls in like white shirts and black shirts, and they're like, can you pick out the amount of times the girls in white shirts passed the ball? And they were doing that, and you really had to stop and focus and like pay attention to what was going on. And they showed the video a second time, and what a lot of people didn't realize, that there was like a man in a gorilla outfit like in the background, just like waving his arms. And
the invisible gorilla, yes. And that's also what is it, inattentive, or blah 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 blah. Something blank. Words. It's perception essentially. But what we're doing right now is but what it does call to the forefront is this slow thinking part of our brain. The frontal cortex part of our brain is not very good at multitasking or spelling thinking right.
The slower process is really going to gear towards an evolution of how you want to proceed or do, or deliberate, as we have on here, deliberate and logical process, where taking that mathematical equation that Anthony gave us earlier. I don't remember what the number was, 25 plus 7 or times 75. We're going to have to stop and think, unless you know math like that. For me, I'm going to have to stop and think and get out a piece of paper and do the math skills as I grew up with. It's going to take me a little extra effort.
I could do it in my head. It's just going to take a minute.
That's still slow thinking.
But it's still slow thinking. Yeah, it's not like boom, boom, boom. It's not like.
So where does fast thinking and slow thinking come into play during coaching?
Well, I can tell you with couples, they are very reactionary with each other. Oftentimes they have resentments that are built, and that triggering with that amygdala hijacking process becomes very quick and efficient. The other side of that is what they're not doing is taking time and recognizing who they're speaking with, what the intention of the conversation is, how, like 4 agreements, don't take it personal. We're trying to figure out where we're going with this information. So I could see it definitely be part of that. Part of adding the system 2 versus the system 1, which they've probably done at home. System 2 is just let's talk about what the intention is and where you want to go with it. So it becomes much more of a process than an instant reaction.
As a coach, are you guys thinking that we utilize slow thinking, system 2, more, or should we be utilizing that more frequently than system 1? I understand as a seasoned coach, maybe some things become a little bit more autonomous to you. But do you guys think there's a benefit to one or the other? Maybe a mixture of both come into play?
I think it's system 2 mostly.
And I think it depends on what's going on, because in the example I gave you, we had to be in 1 to have a quicker response. In 2, you're going to have a slower response because you have to have a thought process that goes along with it for the most part, right?
But in the book that this is coming from, it's not really like prescribing one or the other.
Yeah.
What was his name? Con Man. He's not saying, hey, we should do this more than that. He's trying to be descriptive in the way thoughts are formed. But to us as coaches, though, we recognize that, and I think we do put that should, or at least try to teach, let's slow down the thinking, let's give room for silence. That's where I see, system 2 coming, or we try to encourage that in our clients as well. Leave room for silence so people can think about what they're going to say or what their answers are to your questions as well. I don't know if we should really prescribe that our students or clients, not students, clients should be thinking 1 or 2, but we should observe, what do our clients tend to more? Do they tend towards system 1, fast thinking? Are they really quick with answers? Or do they like to take their time? Do they like to think over problems? Which, I mean, we provide them all the space and time in the world as coaches to, sit and think and carefully analyze what we're saying. We're not trying to move the session along as fast as humanly possible.
I think that's a good point.
Some new coaches, though, think that's what they're supposed to do, that they are supposed to be, that rocket in the chair helping that client move along quickly. And that's honestly not where the best growth is. Like you were mentioning, that space where we're providing that client that silence to imagine, to get into their daydream of the possibilities, to open up that mirror neurons, even to watch other people, what they're doing, to see if that works for them. So there's a lot of different avenues that slowing down is very functional. But when you've got to make a snap decision and a decision like driving, right? And then there's an accident in front of you. You've got to make a snap decision. You can't sit there and go, what should I do here?
Brooke, I see you use this technique all the time for clients.
Which one is that?
The coin flip.
Oh, I do. It's one of the things I do all the time. But it's it's more than it's. Sometimes it is. It's utilizing the slow thinking portion, or the fast thinking portion, actually. And it's a way to sort of tap into that fast thinking, because a lot of times I use it, the coin flip, where people are stuck in this deliberate slow thinking space and they're thinking themselves in circles, right? They're not able to make a decision. Does anybody here have anything that they need to decide between? Is anybody torn between 2 things to do, or 2 options?
I have one.
Yo, yeah, Jerome. Okay, tell me.
I am decide. Well, I tend to overthink on a lot of different things. I'm actually moving soon, and I need to know whether or not I'm getting new furniture, or should I take the time to get a U-Haul truck, bring it with me, bring my furniture currently, and then move it upstairs, or just order it from Amazon. And then that means now I have to build the furniture, which there's two. I gotta weigh. I've been trying to weigh my options here. Both sound not so fun, but a decision has to be made.
Okay, so we're just going to keep it in this black and white world. Okay, so we're going to say heads on this here coin is Amazon. Okay, it's buying your furniture. Amazon, Wayfair, wherever you want to buy it.
No Wayfair.
Overstock, Target, wherever you're going to buy it. This is our buying. So that the head of this coin is buying. The tail of this coin is going to be U-Haul. All right. So U-Haul and Amazon. Heads is Amazon. Tails is U-Haul. So Jerome, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor before I flip this coin.
Yes.
Can you commit to me that you will do whatever way this lands?
Yes, I can.
Okay. You can. So you've made this commitment. Okay.
Yes. Right.
All right. So heads is Amazon. Tails is U-Haul. Man, okay, I got it. All right. You ready to know what it is?
Yes, I have. Go ahead.
It's heads. It's heads.
Good.
So share with me what you were about to say, though.
It's funny. I was going to say, I think I very slightly had a result that I think edged out. As soon as in that moment that you went ahead and flipped it, I think I realized in the heat of the moment that I think there was an option that I preferred than the other.
And that was?
Heads. So I'm happy about that. But also now there's thoughts percolating where I'm thinking of the downfall, or the negative, outfall from what it is that I have to, when it comes to also what I didn't think about, what I hadn't thought about when I was kind of laying out both those options, is also additionally that's going to cost more money too, ordering from Amazon, as opposed to putting in a little bit more time, maybe a little bit more strength, asking maybe some people to come help as well. So
we're back in this cycle.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
We're back in this cycle of system 2, just overthinking things, right?
I wanted to ask a few questions about this example that we just saw. One, what would you have said, Brooke, if Jerome just said no? Like, he's like, I'm not ready to, like,
no.
I can't commit to a choice on the coin flip.
Then we would have talked about that, for sure. We would have absolutely had a conversation about that.
Second of all, this goes into some of the stuff from Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow about heuristics and biases, and how the things we say or the things presented in front of us will drastically affect what we choose to do. So, Jerome, if I was doing the coin flip and I asked, heads, you have to keep your old stuff. Tails, you have to buy new things. Versus heads, you get to keep your old things and don't have to buy stuff. Tails, you get all new things and you get to get rid of all your old stuff.
Framing.
I like that. That's what I was going to say. Framing.
What I'm doing is framing the question, and I'm framing the question in different ways, and I'm also using loss aversion as well. Mm-hmm. But the ways in which you word your questions to clients, for examples, are going to be biased, and they're going to affect the way in which your person responds to your question. So you have to be very careful to not let your own biases affect it. Now, if I was a very devious coach, which I am, and I wanted my client to go a certain way on a decision, then wording your question, will affect the outcome of whatever it is being asked.
I would say that, like, the knowledge of these biases that are brought up in this book and that are brought up in this context, when you apply it to coaching, it is a giant playbook of what to be aware of with how you can affect what your clients outcomes are, what your client's choices are, and that you being aware of the way you frame things, the way that you, of all of these things, just bringing awareness around it allows you to be so much more capable of becoming that blank slate, right? Being that truly blank slate that really allows your client to discover their world on their own. Also, I think it can bring a secondary level of knowing too, that if you really got into it and really became adept at recognizing these things, of being able to identify moments when your client might be falling sort of victim to an anchoring or a priming or a cognitive ease or an optimism or a bias themselves, and maybe ask questions around the possibility there. I think it's just a really powerful tool in general to use on many levels, both in the way I approach questioning as a coach, but also in the way that I listen to my client as well. Because it's true. It's one of those things. It's one of the things that we teach is the difference between asking a question of, is that something you really want to do? Or asking, that's a yes or no question, but it's a loaded question right there. That is a very loaded question. We could say, how do you want to, are you comfortable with this plan? Is probably a better, but we don't even want to say comfortable. How do you feel about this plan? Open-ended. Right?
And so, like, even with that word comfort, that's like a loaded.
Yeah, put that in there. That's loaded right there. Now, if it was something that they had said prior to, I want a plan that I'm comfortable with, then we've got 100% permission to go ahead and insert that comfortable. But without that knowledge, we've got to be very aware of when we're doing that. Let's sort of, I think, talk through a little bit these concepts. So let's begin with the priming effect. You sort of introduced a bit of the framing, but why don't we sort of just take a moment to touch on each of these biases brought up in this book. And I'm going to be right back.
Yeah. So priming, it's essentially when an individual's, or let's say the client's, exposure to a certain stimulus influences or encourages their response to subsequent stimulus. The way I see this play out in everyday coaching, and even in the business of coaching, is with marketing. We prime our ideal clients to be receptive of what we're giving them and what we're coaching. And if that priming doesn't work, then that's kind of filtering the client list for us. We're not coaching the people who are not going to respond to, sorry, there's a bug flying around. We're not responding to our message. And then once we get into the session, I'm trying to think of a good example of this. If we talk about, or let's say my Instagram, I'm a coach. I'm like what do they call those coaches who are all about like getting money in abundance? I guess an abundance coach. Let's just go with that. And my Instagram posts are all about, my vacations and how much money I'm making and all this wonderful stuff that I have in abundance. And my clients, I'm friends with them. Maybe before our first session, or maybe before one of our sessions, I decide to share a post with them about how I went on this awesome vacation. That is a prime example of priming, because I'm trying to get them ready for what we're about to talk about as far as my brand of coaching is, which is abundance and how they can have more. I'm not saying you should do that, but that's an example of priming.
So, like, brilliant priming, Tony Robbins uses brilliant priming kind of strategy in his, one of the first things you will happen upon, and a lot of coaches do this in his website, is a sort of like personality quiz or satisfaction quiz, a life wheel kind of based thing where people are assessing different parts of their life and their satisfaction, right? And so what he's doing essentially is a couple things on two levels. He's priming them to come in and go, pardon my French, I am dissatisfied, really dissatisfied right here. Like, really. And so, man, I really do have something to work on with Tony. I really do. I'm willing to pay to bring this part of my life that I am not. And he put a big, bright light on the fact that they're, which is huge priming, it's also offering him an opportunity to then market to them about their needs specifically, which is the other part of that that's kind of brilliant. So, but he's definitely primed them with this concept of, okay, this is where you're hurting. This is what this is what we can work on. And he doesn't have to do that work anymore. They know that coming into his site, that there are parts of their lives they need to work on. It's very, very smart marketing for a coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There are other organizations that do a similar thing that I won't bring up, but it's maybe not as I don't know. It gets all a little manipulating after a while.
Yeah.
When you know about it, it gets a little scary. But also can be done very brilliantly, very smartly, in the sense that if you have your clients fill out a thing before they work with you that says, hey, what do you want to work on? You're getting them ready to do that work before they even show up. Let's talk about anchoring. Anchoring is kind of like priming's mathematical brother.
Anchoring's fun.
What?
Anchoring's fun when you use it to your advantage. It sucks when it's to your disadvantage.
It's like what is it? It's funny. Okay, so one of the things we would say is the average length of a cat. Is the average length of a cat more or less than 300 centimeters?
Less.
I have to remember how big a centimeter is. I don't think it's very big. Okay, so 300.
Yes, right.
Oh, I'm going to go with less. Yeah.
Well,
so give me a number. Give me a number.
I guess
200.
250.
250. Lisa?
Okay.
I'm thinking. So if a centimeter is this big, and
what kind of cat are we talking about again?
Yeah, you got to answer quick. You got to very short.
Yeah, I have to reason it out. I have to do logic. Okay. So it's about a foot and a half.
The average length of a, let's say, I'm trying to think of something that is, let's say the average length of a corgi.
Hey, Corgi, happy birthday, Jen!
Is that more or how much would you guess? Is it more or less than 600 centimeters?
Less.
I want to go less.
And what length would you give that corgi?
So...
Same size as the cat. I want to say 250.
200.
Okay, so you guys went with the same, which is fine. You did not prove the priming, but let me look at the actual length in centimeters of a cat.
I looked up.
I have no idea. I just guessed 200.
Hold on.
Well, they're like a foot and a half long, right?
They're about 25 centimeters typically.
Okay. I was about to say 200 centimeters is like a lot larger than the span of my arm.
Yeah, okay. So they're usually about 25. But you guys fell victim to anchoring because I said 200 or 300. You guys immediately wanted to stay close to that number because you were anchored with that 300 to begin with. So when I said 300, your brains both automatically went, well, it can't be that far away. But the truth of the matter is it's 25, but that's what we do intuitively. We latch on to numbers and we'll then sort of, for no logical reason, make our guesses based on those numbers. And that is the anchoring trick right there.
Well, apparently I don't like to play, so there.
My brain goes, I don't want to do it. I don't want to because I don't know, and I couldn't possibly know.
I have to reason this out. I cannot just guess that. It does not feel factual.
Another example of anchoring in my life is buying used cars. I've only ever bought used cars. And the rule of thumb is whoever says the price first is going to end up losing. Because they're the one who's setting the anchor for the other person to then try to, bargain. So if I were to put my lowest price, I can't go any lower than that. I can't then ask if I was like, I'll have $10,000 for this car. The dealer's like, okay, we can do 11,000. I say, actually 9,000. Already lost because I've anchored the price of the car, regardless of what the actual price is.
How funny. I
luckily for
never
me-
played that game. That is the funniest thing that we're talking. I did not play that game. I go, you just tell me how much that car is. I am not telling you what I'm affording and what I'm. You tell me how much that car is.
Oh no, I played that game hard one time, and then I
Yeah.
just after like we were bargaining the price, he set the price first, so I was able to work him down. Then I said, well, I'll probably go to some other places, just look around. And as soon as I was walking out, the guy was like, oh, wait, I talked to my manager. He said we can do this price, and
Yeah.
I saved
Whatever.
myself a few
And
thousand.
the truth of the matter was the car was really only worth about,
Yeah, it was only worth
I
$5.
know.
that.
No, it's so
And the
true.
moment
Which-
you drive up a lot, it's dropped in
Which
value.
the benefit of slow thinking was I did compare the price of the car to other cars like of equal
Before you
value.
Yeah.
So I did do my research beforehand. You probably should never go buy a car without doing your research, but the way that I could see anchoring benefiting our coaches is when they price out their services.
That brings us to another sort of concept in this. I'm trying to think of a good example for this and find it at the same time. This is it. Okay, so before we go into it, I want to sort of give you an example. Let me think here. You watch those full videos? So if I give you the same example, you probably know exactly what I mean when I say it. So I'm trying to give you another example of something similar.
We should have had one dummy just not do any of the research.
I know, right? But I'm just trying to think of something that people.
If there's an example in that hour-long talk,
No, it's not the hour long.
never mind then.
So let's do this. It kind of brings in another bias though, so maybe I shouldn't do that. Would you guys invest in a company that manufactured pesticides?
Strange
Yeah.
question.
Maybe. Depends.
Yes.
Depends.
Yes.
If it-
Why did you say yes? Yes.
I said yes because pesticides are used a lot for like I guess a business that is mostly stable in my mind. I'm just guessing. I don't know what agricultural stocks look like, but I'm thinking, well, pesticides are used in almost everything as far as agricultural goes. Let's go for it.
And Jerome?
I don't even think agricultural. I think because I've got family and I visit Louisiana often, pesticide is something that is just used to reduce the amount of ridiculous and scary insects that they have down there that can eat you alive.
Mosquitoes that big.
Yes, mosquitoes. That's what I'm thinking.
And then Lisa, you said maybe.
I said maybe because, I also know that pesticides have harmed our environment as well. And so, I'm sorry, my cat is crying. And so it's going to depend on what the intention of that pesticide is, what specific.
Ultimately, though, if we're talking about investing, we're basing I think Anthony may have been the only one who really based it on something that was a little bit in the realm of everybody needs pesticides. But truthfully, we don't know anything about this business. We're making these presumptions because we are going off of sort of a substitution. Well, Jerome doesn't like giant bugs and knows that people don't like giant bugs. And so it's probably going to be a good investment because most people probably also don't like giant bugs. And that's literally our system one sort of kicking in and going, no, this is the smart choice, right? But the truth of the matter is maybe is probably the better answer because there's a lot more information that we probably want to know before we make it.
However, in that car ride in Texas, when I rented a car and I had this giant cockroach climbing on the ceiling, I'd have used it in a heartbeat right then and there.
The other example they give is like if we said, would you invest in a company that manufactured coffins? And a lot of people's first reaction, mine was like, well, maybe. I mean, I think it's a business that's going to keep on going, Please, we want to ask but there's a lot of people that innately go no. And it was funny. They were like, well, if you said yes right off the bat, I put it in there. They're like, you're a death obsessed madman. And I was like, well, my gut reaction was to say yes, so I guess I'm a death obsessed madman. But what we do is we have this a lot of times, this icky feeling around death, and so we go, no, I don't want to. And it's may not be the logical thing to do, and we might want to sort of employ our system 2 brains in that space. And then we'll go back through and sort of talk about how these might sunk costs. This is an interesting one. I think it's one that can apply to our clients really well. Mm-hmm. The example they gave of this is like, there was a woman, she really likes candy bars, so she bought a giant box of candy bars. But then, she gained a few pounds, and now she is trying to lose weight, and she's learned that the candy bars are just not good for her. But she's like, I spent, $300 on these candy bars. I can't just throw them away. And this is this sort of like feeling that we keep investing in these poor things because we've already invested in them. And truthfully, no, just throw the candy bars out. Give them to the kids next door and ruin their lives.
Girl, I don't know if you would get this reference, but I was immediately thinking of the SpongeBob episode where they're trying to sell candy bars.
Yes. I don't want to say it out loud right now, but chocolate.
To all our millennial and Zoomer.
Yeah. Also, a good example, I think, would be maybe you've got a car that you've had for a while and it starts breaking down on you, and you continue to fix it time and time again, even though it's probably just better off to go off and get yourself a new or used car like Anthony would. So.
Here's something, though, that people tend to do more. They are going to get divorced more rapidly than they used to. That is a quick decision they make. They're tired of the way that relationship's going, and they're going to go down that divorce path more so than they will spend time adjusting their personal behavior.
Well, I think that's kind of the opposite of sunk cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that sunk cost would be, well, I've been married for 15 years, and I couldn't possibly leave this relationship because I've spent so much time investing in it and energy, and I can't imagine spending so much time and energy trying to change somebody else. I've been trying to change this guy for so long, and he still isn't, but I'm going to keep trying because I've been trying for 15 years. And but it's like, well, maybe the best thing is to let it go.
How do we help our clients explore that?
We could flip that. Like Lisa said, maybe sunk costs can be utilized in a good way. Well, in a way to sort of look at the big picture and go, well, maybe when you look at the grand scheme of things, this is where you want to be, depending on the situation. In the candy bars, it's a very sort of black and white kind of thing, but there's definitely gray areas in all of this, of course.
Interesting.
One of the things. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I can also think of, like, I had a client a while ago who was wanting to leave her job to do full-time coaching, but sunk cost fallacy was getting in the way of that. She didn't like her job. It didn't really meet her needs financially either, but she stayed so long and it kind of just barely met the minimum that she's like, I can't leave. I got to find a way to do both. And I was like, okay, we'll try to figure that out, how you can do that. Let's explore that thought process a little bit, though. But yeah, sunk cost fallacy.
Say that fast 5 times.
Sunk cost fallacy.
Sounds like you're saying conk.
Is a big block. Is a very big block in a lot of clients' I guess journeys when they want to change and have transformation because they've invested so much in their current lifestyle.
Well, and then there's that fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
Which will bring us to our next one, which is kind of funny, which is sort of the opposite of fear of the unknown, but it's this optimism effect that happens with people, which sort of relates to overconfidence effect, where we sometimes go into things, and I think this applies to clients when they maybe get defeated, maybe they go out and they don't They think everything's, it was going to go one way. Oh man, this is going to be amazing. Boom. It's not as great or as easy as they originally or initially thought, because there's a lot of things they didn't consider, and they sort of fall victim to this overconfidence optimism effect that happens, where they really don't think of the whole picture, and a lot of times they don't consider chance, and then sometimes chance comes into play in these things. And we as people do not account for chance. Rarely do we account for chance, because it really is hard for us to it's hard for us to imagine things going ways that we don't even imagine them going, right? And that's really what chance is. So how do you calculate and account for chance? And then I think where this comes into play with clients is they can, when things don't go as they expect, and maybe it's just because of chance, there isn't a reason that it happened, it just happened to be this way. They can apply a lot of stories to it. And sometimes maybe those stories can be things that are keeping them stagnant or keeping them from moving forward. And I think this is something that really comes into play with sort of block removal and things like that, where they begin to think this isn't possible because they went out and tried it one time and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And they've applied all these stories as to why it's never going to work and why it doesn't work. And then we as coaches sort of can start to explore, well, what if it did work? What if, is this the way you still want to go? And all of these things.
It's kind of challenging with the optimism bias, because I've encountered something similar to that with a client. They wanted to make, like, I can't remember the actual number. Let's just say they wanted to make $50,000 in their first year of coaching. Different business. I'm changing the business, but it's essentially the same. $50,000 in the first year of coaching. That seems a bit optimistic to me.
I still want to go in my head. Like, how much are they willing to spend, though?
Yeah, well, it's more so just when considering the statistics of people who just go into businesses and they're open their own businesses in general. They wanted to make a profit of 50,000. Let me be more specific. When you're looking at the statistics, though, you don't start making a profit in your business for at least a few years.
And I think too, there's something to consider. You may want to make a profit of 50,000, but it might cost you 150,000 to make that extra 50,000 and do so quickly. Like there's a lot of that there's a lot of things that don't get taken into account is the amount of money you have to put into a business for it to come back to you and for it to start to make that return is much higher than I think people really consider going out the gate. That your business is going to be an investment, and it's an investment that means putting it out. And one of the things we always say is you have to be willing to put out. If you're not going to put out the money, then it's energy, time, effort, all of these things.
My question is, though, with any sort of optimistic goal, and I think maybe I should let's pump it up a little bit so it's something a bit even more unrealistic. Let's say,
well, let's not hang on there right there, because what I did is I calculated, if they want to take away 50,000, let's say they have a lower overhead at 25,000 for the year, just that's working from home, doing the bare minimum. They want to make that's 500 appointments for an hour at $150. So breaking that down into a per appointments, how are they going to get 500 appointments for the year? What does that break down even to the month? How does that? So we in this optimism spot, we're still working in level 2. What is it? What is the thing called?
System
2? What is it?
Thinking system 2. System 2.
Thank you. Not our level 2, but system 2. It still goes down into that system 2 when we're working this optimism side. You can even make the dollar amount less, and that what your argument is, Anthony, is still appropriate.
Yeah. So, but my question, going back to that specific instance at the time, I didn't really question that. It seemed a bit optimistic to me, but it wasn't. It was my job as a coach to figure out how to get to that point. Mm-hmm. Is it ever appropriate whenever a client throws out a highly optimistic, goal, to ask, how did you arrive at that number, or how did you arrive to that goal?
Sure.
Because I now I'm thinking like, what if I have a client who wants to make $1 million in 1 year? Okay, that's a number that you're anchoring yourself to. How did you come to that number?
Mhm.
What caused you to get
What
to that?
supports that number? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's tapping into the emotional relevance, I think, of
Yeah.
what does making $1 million in a year mean to that client? Like, because it's not ultimately, it's not going to be about that $1 million. There's a lot of reason why they are anchoring to expecting and coming in, unless they have a very specific plan. Well, I've already done the math. I need $1 million in order to affect this.
You get one client.
When somebody's walking through the door, they're plucking these numbers sort of out of thin air.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and that's because to them there's just some emotional relevance attached with making that, what is it, 7-figure salary or what have you.
Mhm.
And that's when you tap into that. Okay, what does this mean, and why is this $1 million important to you? And then we can start to tackle about, okay, how do we start to take steps towards that million? We're not saying, I think, ever that it's not possible. We're not saying ever that we can't. But it is important to find out what that means to them.
It's defining it. It's what we've always talked about. It's defining what their word means. So I want to make $1 million. Define what that looks like. What does that mean? How are you in that space? What's happening for you that you're attracting, the higher dollar potential client? Who are you? Where are you going? I mean, there's just so many questions, Anthony. So yeah, you absolutely can ask for a definition. Is that what I wouldn't call it?
Yeah.
Well,
What they mean by that.
I think then the secondary question too is, okay, what can we accomplish in these sessions to get you closer to that $1 million goal?
Right.
What does that look like?
So they come. So it typically are. When we're working with clients, we're meeting 1 week to the next week. Typically, so next week we talk about, if that's what they want to work on, what we spoke about this session. How did that play out between our time? And then you still have to ask. It might not be building that again. Where are we going in today's session, which can be something completely different.
Can
Anyway.
we please do a live in which we throw it out there to some of our students? Is there anybody in our chat that wants to make $1 million? And then bring them in here and then do like a session around getting them to make $1 million. I think that would be so much fun.
That would be fun. Yeah, that would be fun. That would be fun.
We kind of talked about all of these. We talked about priming, anchoring, framing, and all of these biases. Do you guys have any final thoughts with regard to sort of how they might come into play in coaching, how to use them, how to utilize them, what they mean for coaches?
Sometimes it's if they're in one, like if they're in system one, sometimes getting them, I have questions around what you've shared. I'm wondering, and that builds it into the system 2 question. So it slows things down enough for them to have that thought process. Or conversely, like you did with the coin toss, that coin toss helps them to make a decision. And then it goes back into, if you saw Jerome, it went back into system 2 because then he started reasoning things out, getting into his logical processes with that. So it can be used in any kinds of way with coaching to help that client process, what direction they're going in.
I think alternatively too, you want to make sure that you're being aware of which system you're using too. Sometimes, maybe sometimes you're making, or you could be potentially making the session not so safe, as we try and make that safe space every time we are with the client, because we're using a particular system that the client doesn't react well with. So just being aware of both, yes, within your client, whether they're using system 1, system 2, what works better, and then also for you, and also realizing whether that system 1 or system 2 is providing the best result for your client in their decision-making process.
And part of that could be you're sharing that education about, about this tool that we're using. We're using system 1, system 2. Here's what this means. Is this something that we could play around with in this session, right? So asking even permission to use a tool allows them to make a decision based on the information you've shared.
I could see a scenario where maybe after a few weeks of using System 1, again, being aware of it in your style of coaching,
Yeah.
really providing no results that your client seemed to be satisfied with that knowledge being known, switching up to System 2 and maybe moving forward with that, seeing if results change to the benefit of your client at that point.
Yeah. Sure.
My final thoughts that sort of complement what Lisa and Jerome said. They're complementary processes that you utilize the advantages of both in your coaching session, like how we demonstrated with Brooke, the coin flip. That's a System 1 sort of exercise where it forces somebody to make a quick and instinctual decision. Other times we use System 2 when we see our clients making gut choices without really thinking about the consequences, or sort of how are they going to justify or reason out their decisions in a way that makes sense to you as the coach. So being able to slow down your own thinking as a coach while analyze the fast and slow thinking of your client will lead to more benefits and better coaching in the long run. Brooke, final thoughts?
I don't have any.
Okay.
Did I space on the cognitive ease substitution? Because I thought that was. Did we go over that? That's
Which one?
cognitive ease.
Yeah, that was the coffin one. That was the one where we. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Invest in coffins, everybody.
Invest in coffins is a good one. We're not advising any investments on this show.
I'm advising and telling people to make.
When it comes different, no, we're not doing that. I think that's about it. We'll wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know we had some issues technically today, but we will get that work figured out for next one. Make sure you guys check out Certified Life Coach Institute. Do it. We certify life coaches in 3 days.
Take our classes, like, share, subscribe, comment on our videos.
Have fun. Have fun in our classes. Come join us.
Yes, we will prime you to have a great time. And then make sure you check us out. We do this every week at 4 o'clock on Facebook and YouTube. And also, next week's topic will be stress and the effects of stress and all of these things and what stress is for us as coaches and clients and stress. We're going to talk about stress next week. I think that's all. So.
All right. See you guys next time.